Hi, everyone. My name is Stefania Van Dyke. I am the Associate Director of Interpretive Engagement at the Denver Art Museum. And we're here today to talk with Dawn from History Colorado and the artist David. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you. My name is Dawn DiPrince. I am the Chief Operating Officer for History Colorado.
And David.
Thank you. My name is David Ocelotl García, and I'm a local mural painter and sculptor.
Great. Well, thanks to you both for being here with me today. So I'll just set a little context. In late June, the Denver Art Museum opened the exhibition Norman Rockwell, Imagining Freedom. And it's an exhibition that really focuses on his illustrations in kind of the Depression era, World War II, and Civil Rights era, but it centers around Norman Rockwell's 1943 paintings of the Four Freedoms, which are from a speech that FDR gave. So Rockwell painted the Four Freedoms, which are freedom of speech, freedom from want, freedom from fear, and freedom of worship. And David was among the artists selected by History Colorado to reimagine Rockwell's paintings. So Dawn, can you tell us a little bit about this, the New Four Freedoms project?
Yes, the New Four Freedoms are part of a larger initiative that we call This Is What Democracy Looks Like. At the center of that initiative is an exhibit from the Smithsonian Institute. We will be opening September 12th. It is on American democracy. The exhibit ends with Rockwell's Four Freedoms, the original, and we thought it would be really powerful to bring in localized voices and artists to reimagine the Four Freedoms from both a local perspective as well as a contemporary perspective.
Okay, great. Well, without further ado, we can start our conversation with David about his reimagining of Norman Rockwell's freedom of worship. So Dawn, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. So we kicked off this New Four Freedoms project at the very end of February with a little ceremony at the History Colorado Center. And it entailed actually an Uncle Sam's hat with the Four Freedoms inside the hat. And each of the four artists drew from the hat, and that's how they figured out which artist went with which freedom. So David, you selected freedom of worship when you drew out of the hat. What were your thoughts about that freedom being connected to you? And what was some of your process as you were imagining how you would depict the freedom of worship?
Thank you, Dawn. Well, first off, I was really excited to have received that theme because I felt like it would be something I would want to create with with a more personal kind of ambition to create that. So I was right away when I pulled that out, I was very excited about that, and then just the idea of kind of honoring Rockwell in a way that the possibility of, I didn't have any specific idea yet, right? When I pulled that out, I wasn't like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do, but it was more like, oh, I know I could do something with this, but I want to do it in a way that still has something resembling the original painting. So that was my initial thing that came to my mind, is like, I want to recreate this, but something to do with the original. How am I going to do that? So that's when I started my thinking process.
Great.
Thank you.
So, and then a huge part of it, obviously, is the figures that take up really almost the entire canvas. Can you tell us a little bit about the people that are in your painting?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I wanted to do when I started thinking about how do I feel about this topic? And so right away I thought about kind of like my own beliefs, spirituality. I identify a lot with my ancestral heritage from Mexico and kind of tribal beliefs from Mexico. And so right away I think about that. It's like something I already live. So, but the interesting thing is for me, this type of tribal um, um, beliefs and teachings are very much connected to creating things and like creating, you know, some people call it art, some other people call it different things, but it's connected to your creativity, you know, like who you really are. So for me, it always has to do, my art always has to do somehow with my kind of honoring my ancestors and using symbols to have to speak and in my composition. So right away I started connecting that, and then it felt very personal because I wanted to. When I think about that, I think about myself and my own reality. So then I started. So then the idea was I often feel very spiritual when I create my art. Like I feel like I'm in this state of meditation and like it's kind of the same thing as like when I'm practicing certain when I'm like studying tribal philosophy, and that whole feeling of like connecting with nature and being like being in the moment and all that. So that to me kind of all directs me to my art and creating my art, my process, the way I think, the way my philosophy behind my art. So I started thinking of myself as how, well, my passion, my spirituality really lies within creating my art and my art itself. So that was something right away that I felt would be interesting to depict in the painting, my own personal kind of like belief in what is spirituality, what is my freedom of doing so. And so after I passed that stage, I started thinking about the people in my life that actually have influenced me tremendously, more than I can express. And I started thinking about these people, and I'm like, wow, if I see them, I depict them the way I see them in their own passion of, you know, helping community or being involved with, you know, native events and being involved with community events, the arts. So I think of these people, and so I started thinking of specific people that I would like to show, and I would like to honor in this painting, just almost to say thank you for helping me, you know, like helping me evolve and helping me like learn, you know, helping me be a better person. And so I was like, I gotta use these people, and that's kind of like, so then I started, you know, thinking of these people, and then imagining them into my composition, drawing them in there real rough, and then that's kind of where I started. And then after that, I actually reached out to all these people and said, you know, I have this project, and I would love to use you in there. And it was kind of awkward in a way because I don't often ask people to be in my work. You know, I don't know why. Maybe I'm shy about that. But I always imagine people what they look like, and it's more about the story I'm telling as opposed to the people in the piece. So again, I'm coming back to what I've studied from Rockwell is using, you know, people in his paintings that were real people that he wanted to portray and, you know, to tell a story. And so that's kind of the elements I was wanting to use real people, but that I identify with that are really significant for me.
So it's interesting because of there's a lot of similarities between your approach and Rockwell's approach, as you said, using people that are important to you. And he also used friends and neighbors and family members as models. But I think what's interesting is you've really personalized it to these particular people, whereas his were models and not meant to be the individuals that they are. They really, as you said, wanted to tell the story that he wanted to tell. And part of that is, I think, what your figures are holding in their hands, that personalized, but also the fact that Rockwell showed the hands praying, and yours are different. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I wanted to give the painting, like I think in Rockwell's painting, it's somewhat literal. Some of the imagery in there is a little more literal. I wanted to give it a more like symbolic, like a graphic design element to it, like more symbolism. I wanted to add more color because I feel like the painting he did, at least I never seen it in person, but the imagery that I was able to study was somewhat gray, but I also read he purposely had some kind of gray tone to it. So I wanted to give it a different perspective, you know, not only my own style, but it's a different way, a different approach. So I wanted to go with more of a graphic approach, like a design, more symbolic. And so the hands, and so one of the interpretations was the hands, very important, because I think that was significant in the original painting, you know, the hands that are praying. But for me, it was a little more, it was a little different, and it's kind of really based on, again, my own like reality of how people pray. But it was more of like, they were like giving of themselves, you know, like giving of yourself to help others, I think is a different approach, as opposed to feeling like you need something from others. You're like more like giving, because I think as you give, you get back, kind of like that process. So I wanted to have that feeling, and so that's why they're holding these hearts. That it's more like they're like they're so connected to this symbol that they're willing to even share it with others. Like they're connected that way. So they're like, they have their hands more open and more like giving, you know, outwardly. And so then it has the heart with the specific symbol that I designed for each individual person.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there that hopefully people will, you know, come to History Colorado and look at it in person to really take the time, because there's a lot to look at here. And I have one more question about the figures before we move on, and that is the mask that one of the figures kind of in the center is wearing. Can you talk about that a bit?
That character is actually my own spirit animal. My spirit animal is a jaguar, but I originally didn't want to be in the photo, in the painting, because I felt even though it was about my reality and my perspective, I didn't feel the need to be in there. So I wanted it to be about the people. But somehow, because of the way I organized it and the people involved, I originally I drew myself in there originally, because I was like, that's my thinking process. I'm like, that's me, and then these are the people around me. And so, but then I took myself out, and then I put myself back in. But it's not, but again, it's my spirit animal, which to me speaks to my spirituality, again, with my Mexican heritage. And again, I think that was going back to like the idea of worship and spirituality. And it's like, it's kind of like, for me, I think when I think about that, it's like outside of me. It's like someone, it's like it exists within me kind of thing, but it's not the physical me. You know, to me, that's a little bit of spirituality, of being able to like be outside of yourself, to be able to connect that way. Anyway, that's the character, is the jaguar, is the Ocelot, is like my name, and he's the spirit character in there that represents my kind of spirituality.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's also an interesting comparison to Rockwell in a different way, is that he oftentimes inserts himself as a character. So in yours, it's much more personal and from within, whereas with Rockwell, I think in most cases, he's kind of putting himself in there almost as a little hidden clue or fun thing or character, but yeah, a kind of different approach at a self-portrait in a way. Dawn, do you want to ask?
So, you know, one of our goals with this project was really to reimagine this from this localized perspective, to be thinking about this from Denver or Colorado and through that lens. And one of the things that struck me about the piece that is different from Rockwell, you know, Rockwell's background is dark and there's no imagery in it. But your background, at least to me, evokes this sense of Colorado. There's like a rugged, it feels like there's a rugged landscape in the background. And I just am curious about your thoughts on why a background that was different from Rockwell, and what you were trying to depict with your choices in the background.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think one of the things that so once I was inspired by the original painting and like I studied the colors, then I really kind of just take off on my own expression, because at that point I can't move any further into the study and like how deep I want to like depict the original. It's like ultimately I wanted to create my own way. So that's kind of where the background comes into play, because I often use backgrounds in my work, in that the background for me represents the idea of multiple realities that could exist, which comes from my fascination for physics and things like that and atomic energy. And so in my backgrounds, I kind of like is my creative playground for creating like these different kind of shapes and like dimensions, I don't know what you want to call them, in color, that to me are windows to other places or other feelings. And so I've learned to use that kind of philosophy, but create design work. So like, for example, when I think about these people in the painting, I contemplated, do they need a black background? I was like, well, I feel like they need a background, because it just felt like it needed that. But I wanted to create maybe kind of the feeling of Colorado in my own way. So there's like when you go to the mountains or you see the mountains, and that energy you feel, like that, the way you feel about like living here. And so I try to put that into my background, but not too much thinking about it. But I like to be inspired by where I live, and try to like show a little bit of reference to where these people live. And so then again, I wanted the color is really influential in the background, because I wanted to have some kind of classic tones to it, but I also wanted to have something that's not normally in classic paintings, maybe like that are so dark, so I have more of a yellow. So I started introducing colors. So like if you see in the painting, there's kind of like almost, it feels like mountains, or like, Don, I like the way you expressed it, like this ruggedness to it or something. I like that. But then in the background, it's more like the atmosphere, like what is going on here. So the lighting. So it's like, I always envision having this like warm yellow light with a little bit of like cadmium orange in there. And so it's just a creative exploration, really. At the end, it's just my creation process to see what I could achieve with the lighting. So these are a little bit of the elements, as far as how insignificant the background is to the foreground. It's very important for me to try to make those things come together.
The energy you talk about evoking in the background, like, really comes across. The energy you spoke about earlier in the hands of the figures, and then the energy of that kind of golden, radiant light in the background, I think is really powerful.
Thank you.
Well, that's the end of our discussion. A lovely note to end on, kind of this beautiful energy that the painting does emanate, and hopefully you watching will see it in person. So the Norman Rockwell Imagining Freedom exhibition at the Denver Art Museum is up until September 7th, 2020. And you can go see Norman Rockwell's original painting for all four freedoms. And you can see, go across Broadway and go see David and the other three reimaginings of these paintings. So please do. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dawn, do you want any closing words about what they can see and when and all that? Like, when does the Democracy exhibition open?
So currently the new Imagine for Freedoms are on display at the History Colorado Center. So you can definitely, in one outing, hop over to the Denver Art Museum to see the originals, and then come across to the History Colorado Center to see the reimagined versions. As part of our initiative, the American Democracy exhibit from the Smithsonian will be opening on September 12th, but we already have things in motion. Greg Deal, a well-known Indigenous artist in Colorado, has curated a show that is in conversation with American democracy. We also have our first lecture kicking off this week, and it will be focused on the Electoral College. So there's a lot of ways to get engaged and think about freedom and democracy right in the heart as we approach election season.
Yeah, good timing for all of this. So, all right, thank you everybody so much. That's it.
Great, thank you.